Hi, everyone. My name is David Gillig, FAHP, and I'm pleased to join you today with Jim Quinn. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about in a minute. But I chair the 2020 Si Seymour Award Committee, and very pleased to be with you today. This is a special time that I get to spend with Jim Quinn to talk about his career and his insights, not only for what has been important to him in his career in the past, but also insights about going forward. And really, this is a celebration. This is a celebration of Jim as the 2020 Harold J. Si Seymour Award winner. I want to tell you a little bit about this award. Many of you know a lot about it already, but I want to tell you just to get us all on the same page of how important this award is and to celebrate Jim. It's AHP's highest honor, recognizing distinguished leadership in association affairs and in healthcare philanthropy. And since 1970, AHP has presented the Si Seymour Award to a development professional whose career reflects excellence and outstanding leadership in healthcare philanthropy. The past award recipients of this will give you a sense of the quality of the people that we're talking about. There's a very rigorous nomination and review process, and I'm very pleased to have served with some outstanding professionals and colleagues in AHP to go through the nominations, and I can tell you that we unanimously chose Jim Quinn as the 2020 Si Seymour Award winner. Here are a couple reasons why. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Jim. If you'd like to learn more, there's information on the website, on the AHP website. But Jim is a 43-year career veteran in healthcare, in philanthropy. He started in higher education at Montclair State. Then he went over to the consulting side for a while with Brakely John Price Jones. And then he became the founder of Morristown, of the Foundation for Morristown Medical Center, where he spent the last 31 years serving that great institution. During that time, he completed successfully 6 major campaigns, and during his career, generated more than $250 million in philanthropy for the organizations he served. He's also been a very generous servant to our profession, serving on dozens of committees for AHP, on the AHP Board of Directors, numerous speaking engagements with AHP at conferences and serving on faculty. And he is the past award winner of the Robert Smythe Award as the Outstanding Development Professional from AFP. So this is someone that we are delighted to celebrate today and this year as the 2020 Si Seymour Award winner. And we thought we'd bring Jim on camera for a little while to talk about, reflect on some important aspects of his career and also some insights going forward. I know you're going to learn a great deal from Jim. His experience and wisdom has benefited his own institution, but many, many of our colleagues in the profession for decades now. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to ask some big kind of grand questions and really spend time listening to Jim, his thoughts. But we're going to start really at the beginning. Jim, tell us about how you got started in this profession originally.
Well, before I do, David, and thank you very much, I want to first thank AHP. I want to thank the nominating committee, and I especially want to thank Jay Angeletti, who spearheaded my nomination, and all my colleagues and board members who contributed to the nomination process. Deeply appreciate all their kind words. I got started, it was very interesting the way I got started. I graduated from Fairfield University, moved down to Florida, and it was a short order cook. And to say the least, my parents weren't thrilled with this is the way I was spending their hard-earned college tuition. I was down there probably about 6 months, and my sister, who's since passed, was matriculating at Montclair State and sent me this newsletter, I think it was alumni newsletter, saying they were looking for a graduate intern in the alumni office. So I wasn't as much interested in fundraising at that point. I was interested in public relations, and it was kind of a combination. And so I applied, and I interviewed with Diane Carlson, who was alumni director then and is now with IDC.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, she selected me. And I have to say, she was really an inspirational leader. I was only supposed to work 15 hours a week while I was going for my master's. And I was probably putting in 30 plus hours a week just because I was just really loving and enjoying what I was doing. I got to start the first student phone-a-thon. Um, we were involved with the play that we sponsored, with the proceeds going to us. So I was responsible for promoting the play, and then I had a column in the college newspaper. So I just had a ball that whole year that I was involved in that, and that really kind of launched my career. Through Diane's contacts, I got an interview with Brakely John Price Jones, and the late Bill Hobby, who was vice chair at the time, hired me, and that kind of launched my career. Going from there, I had 3 clients with Brakely, starting with the Brigham and Women's Hospital up in Boston as assistant program director, and 4.5, 5 years there, and down to the New York City Boy Scouts in New York City for 3 years there, and then came over to what was then Morristown Memorial Hospital, now is Morristown Medical Center, and spent 4.5 to 5 years as a consultant running a campaign before my predecessor retired, and I was invited to join the staff.
Thank you. It's interesting, the way that people get started in this career. It seems like there are more people today that are seeing it as a profession coming out of college, but back in the day, it really wasn't identified as much as a career, and but you found a great path. So tell us a little bit about, you've had so many accomplishments, 6 campaigns, all the work you did with in the consulting world. But tell us about 2, 3 things that you think are things that you're most proud of, things that you really felt made a difference.
Well, I think the first thing was forming the foundation in the mid 90s, and going from a development office to the foundation and having our own board of trustees and bylaws, and that certainly elevated the profile of philanthropy at the hospital, and that in itself, I think, helped us improve our philanthropy. It also sort of gave us our independence. We then became self-funded, so I wasn't at the mercy of the annual budgeting process, begging for a new staff member or something. As long as we raised the money and we could, demonstrate that we could afford to grow, we added staff. So to me, that was huge in terms of the growth of philanthropy. The couple other things that I thought were big were we had a strategic plan in the late 90s, and I think we were somewhere maybe around 10 or 12 staff about then, and the plan really identified that we still had a lot of untapped potential, and we took a big gamble and virtually doubled the size of the staff to about 20, 22 people, and fortunately we were able to prove that, with the added staff, we were able to generate a lot more income, a lot more philanthropy, but that was a big gamble, I think. Again, it was a calculated gamble, but going almost doubling the size of your staff, you're taking a big gulp and saying, is this going to prove out? And fortunately, it did. The other one where I think I was more lucky than good was that we were in an extensive growth period for the hospital. We went literally from the mid 90s needing to build a cancer center, in the early 2000s building a children's hospital, and around 2005, in that period, building a heart hospital. What professional development officer wouldn't want to have those 3 projects, one after the other, as fundraising objectives? So I feel really blessed that I was able to be in the midst of a huge growth period for Morristown Medical Center, and fortunately each project we were able to successfully achieve our goal or exceed our goal. But I think the thing I was my career that I'm probably most proud of is the growth period sort of calmed down after that, and I'm kind of looking around saying, well, what are we going to do next for an encore? And decided to take a page from higher education, and we decided to really create out of whole cloth a comprehensive campaign. And we set up a process where we invited every department to come in and propose a project. And we had a committee set up to do that. And we ended up selecting 20 projects: capital, program, endowment. And this is the first time we'd ever really undertaken anything like this before. And then rolled in annual giving. And we set a $100 million goal, 5 years. And thrilled to say we were able to raise 107 million. And this allowed us to really make philanthropy valuable, not just for a capital project, but for program development, endowment development. So there virtually wasn't an area in the hospital where philanthropy couldn't benefit or support. And I thought that was really a big milestone for philanthropy at the hospital.
I've had a chance to meet some of Jim's colleagues, both on the development side and on the executive side at Morristown. And I can tell you that the culture of philanthropy there is as strong as I've ever seen. And that comes from leadership, Jim's leadership particularly, but also the executives. But that starts with Jim creating the environment where they can thrive and providing coaching and support for the executives. So outstanding stuff for Morristown for many, many years.
I should make one other point, and that is I do think I was a good talent evaluator, and I was able to put together a good staff. And even though some staff and I might have some disagreements here and there, I think they'd all agree that I was a good judge of talent.
Yeah, good. Well, we're going to ask you about that in a minute. So with all of those great accomplishments, we all run into challenges during our work in our careers. What would you identify as being some of the biggest, toughest challenges that you had to address, and a little bit about how you overcame them?
Well, I think really it comes down to being relevant, healthcare philanthropy being relevant at our institution. When I started in the first few years, it was one of those nice things to have. You could fund a piece of capital equipment or this or that, not really substantive to the operations of the hospital. And really what I wanted to try to set out to do, and I think was the biggest challenge, was how do you make philanthropy relevant? How does it become important to the C-suite that philanthropy is relevant to the financial operations of the medical center? And obviously we did that through all of the campaigns that we're successful with. But even between campaigns, I wanted to make sure that we had a process in place. We could select funding priorities. And again, not just simply capital, could be program, could be helping with, providing new personnel, again, building the endowment, scholarships, endowed chairs, and directorships. But was really trying to penetrate all facets of the hospital operations. And obviously that's something you can't do overnight. I think it's something that takes, in my case, it's over 3 decades. But I do think that, that's, I think what the key job is for a chief development officer is how do you make sure that healthcare philanthropy is having a profound influence on the operations of the institution. And I feel like, it's taken time, but we finally reached that point.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about how you engage your board, because I've met, and again, a number of board members, and your culture of philanthropy is strong and the board is strong. So talk a little bit about your foundation board and how you engage them.
Well, number one, I think that I'm proud of the fact that I think we have an exceptionally talented board. This is a very well-to-do area, a lot of terrific civic and business leaders. So I feel fortunate, again, because the reputation of the hospital, that we were able to attract some really top-level people in our area. That's number one. You've got to have you have to have people who are committed and really thought leaders in your community, I think, to be successful. We've tried our best to engage them. We've asked each board member First of all, I should point out that we don't ask them necessarily to have to ask for a gift. We ask them to help us connect with prospective donors and donors, help in stewarding donors. We ask each trustee, one, has to serve on a committee, two, once in a 3-year term, has to host a small reception or even a golf foursome or a small dinner party. But again, the whole idea is engaging donors and prospective donors. Obviously, we ask them to give. I think our board meetings, we are kind of business-like. It's an hour and a half. We spend an hour on business committee reports, and we spend a half an hour on board education. So we'll have a physician or an administrator come and talk about their field of medicine or their area of responsibility. And the board loves that. That gives them obviously a deeper understanding of, again, of how the hospital functions. And I think that's how you have to engage them. You know, they really have to have a pretty good understanding of how the hospital functions and what the role of philanthropy is, so that they can be good ambassadors for us as they go out. But I think those are basically the things that I've tried to do over the course of time. And again, I think that, you know, having a hospital with our reputation, 3 years in a row now, we've been voted #1 in New Jersey by U.S. News. So, you know, I feel pretty blessed that, you know, I've been working for a great institution.
Yeah, it really is palpable. I attended one, you probably recall, I attended one board meeting and I was impressed. Really incredible place. So Jim, you've had an amazing track record of recruiting and retaining outstanding professionals. What's your secret? How do you do that well? What can you share with us?
Sure, David. Like I said, in some cases, it's hard to judge talent, obviously, in 1 or 2 interviews. So you have to use your instincts and your gut. But surprisingly, you may say that the first thing I really look for is a person's likability. It's so important in our field. People, first instinct is they have to like you, because if you don't have that going for you, you're not going to get very far. The next thing I really try to look for is somebody that has an optimistic view on life. Optimism, I think, is its own source of energy. And if you're a pessimist by nature, I don't think you can be successful in the field of development. I really don't. You really have to be an optimist. I look for people that have pride in their work. One thing I look for in resumes is not simply that you've done the function, but show me evidence that you're successful in the function. You know, if you're a fundraiser, don't just tell me that you raise money from individuals and major gifts or corporate and foundations, but what were your goals and did you achieve or exceed those goals? So I'm really looking for clear evidence of accomplishment. That's somebody that I would look for before hiring. And then probably the most important thing for me is they have to have a sense of humor. I try to enjoy what we're doing, day in, day out. You have to have a sense of humor. You have to be able to have a joke for yourself. You have to be able to take a joke as well as give a joke. And I think the people I hire, I'd like to see a sense of humor in them. I think that's an important attribute.
It's interesting, Jim, as you speak about this. Some of the most important things you're talking about are things that can't be taught.
You're right.
You really can't teach somebody to be likable. I guess maybe you could, but it'd be pretty tough, or to be optimistic, or to have a sense of humor. So it goes to the, how do we ask the right questions to ferret out those attributes of someone, which you've done really well for a long time. So you must be a great question asker and intuitive about people, I would think, highly intuitive. Okay, so let's talk about people who are new in the field, and you've had your more than fair share of new people in the field that have worked for you. What advice would you give to people who are new in the field, to advice around how to be successful, how to think about their career path? What advice would you give?
Well, number one, I don't think development is a 9 to 5 job. I think you have to be prepared to put in some extra hours. I think if you want to be successful, that's number one. You really have to be hardworking. I think you have to be a team player. Really, philanthropy and fundraising is a team sport in so many different ways. If you're a gift officer, you have to rely on the researcher and the donor relations folks. You have to rely on, perhaps physicians, on a good administrator, all the folks at the hospital that you work with day in and day out. So I really think it's incumbent upon you to be a good, strong team player. And that means, being a team player to your colleagues, and your colleagues are going to be, support you. So I think that's important. And the other two things I think are important are, one, finding a mentor. I was fortunate, from Diane Carlson, where I got my start, was a great inspiration to me. To Bill Hobby at Brakely, John Price Jones was like a second father figure to me and a great role model. I mean, they really helped shape my career and taught me how to act as a professional. So I think if you can find somebody who you admire and ask them, would they be willing to put you under their wing, I think that would be a great way to move your career ahead. And the other one is to build a network. Find people who are in your specialty, whether you're a major gifts officer, donor relations, director, a researcher, a gift processor, whatever it might be. Find people in your area, in your field, and build a network for yourself. People who you feel you can go to for a question or a problem and can help get an answer. And again, reciprocate. It's all about, give and take. I think if you do all those things, it'll put you on the right track.
Yeah. So how about some of the specialty career paths? How would you identify the importance of moving up through the annual giving world, moving up through corporations and foundations, moving up through major gifts, plan giving, grants? Are there paths that you think that are important or more important than others, or can each of these have their own career paths by themselves? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think if you want to specialize in any one of those areas, I mean, those are all certainly great career paths. There's no question about it. And in this day and age, I think, with consolidation and larger systems, you're going to have, larger centralized offices. Going to be, I think, a more emphasis on specialty. So I think any kind of career like that can be a very rewarding career, and something that you can feel proud of. I took a path, more with major gifts, going from consulting to major gifts. I think if you ultimately aspired to be a chief development officer, probably major gifts might be a faster career track there, because at the end of the day, so much relies on your ability to work with people, your interpersonal skills, presentation skills, all those things come into play, if you're a major gifts officer. So I think that probably might be a faster way to, if you had aspirations of being a chief development officer.
Oh, thank you. So thinking about the future and advice you would give, now obviously things are very, very different than they were 6 months ago because of COVID. And there are going to be things likely that will change permanently as a result of that. But thinking about that, but also beyond COVID, if there had been no COVID and we were still moving forward, there would still be change, and the future would be different than today. What thoughts do you have about how philanthropy for healthcare is going to change or be different in the next 3 years, in the next 10 years? What are your thoughts?
Well, I've never been much of an innovator. I think I would classify myself as a fast follower, using the courses at AHP, advisory board, really trying to find out what are the latest trends and adopting them. So I don't have a crystal ball necessarily, where things are going 5 or 10 years from now, Obviously, on the federal level, are they going to continue Obamacare or dismantle it? Could have a profound effect on the way hospitals operate, and consequently what effect that could have on healthcare philanthropy. One of the trends we've seen in Morristown, so I can't say if this is the same across the country, but the 80-20 rule no longer applies. Instead of 20% of your donors producing 80% of your gift income, last few years we've seen 1% of our donors producing 75 to 80% of our income. That's scary in that means your top 10, 15 donors are going to carry the bulk of what you're going to raise. Now, one of the things that we've done, just started to do, was we created a committee that's really looking long-term at who could be our principal gift donors of the future. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, who could be our $1 million and over donors, which for us, that's a principal gift. And to identify them today and really develop engagement plans so that in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they could potentially become those future donors. Because no matter how successful you are with all the other levels of gifts, we found if we don't get those top level gifts, we just don't have a successful year. So I hate to say it, but I think that trend likely is going to continue. And I don't know, again, if that's a statement on the concentration of wealth in the country. I can only go by what our experience is at Morristown and what we need to do to, instead of trying to fight it, to try to go with that trend and try to do our best with it. The other thing that we've been working with, and I'm sure so many other programs as well, is I firmly believe that working with clinicians is how to build, a major gifts grateful patient program. That they're so critical, I think, as partners with us, and that's physicians and nurses, and to some degree administrators too. They're so important to it. So I think the trend of developing those programs are going to be important to the success of major gift programs in the future. And then the last thing I had alluded to earlier is if indeed systems, continue to grow and we get bigger and bigger systems, then I think you're going to have, larger and larger development operations. There's going to be greater specialty, and I do think there's going to be more room for professional growth. So I think there's greater opportunity for development professionals in that environment going forward. I think that bodes well for the profession.
Yeah, thank you. So you talked about building a network, talked about finding a mentor or mentors. You alluded to some degree, some education that is provided by AHP, but talk a little bit about the importance of AHP in your career historically, and then also going forward, what encouragement would you give to people about their involvement in AHP?
Well, I think that's the best thing going with our profession is the camaraderie that you have. You meet folks at conferences and strike up friendships and relationships. And again, that becomes the beginning of your network. That's number one. That's where the network starts. Number two, getting involved in either volunteering in a committee or giving presentations, courses at AHP. I find that was extremely helpful to me because not only you're giving back, but you're learning in the process. I mean, if you're going to give a course, obviously you're delving deep into that particular area and learning as much as you can about it. So you're gaining from that knowledge as well as imparting it on to your colleagues. So that to me has been a great experience and very rewarding. So I can't speak highly enough about the value of my membership with AHP over the years and what it's meant to me and how I've been able to build my career a lot through it. It's really been a prime factor, I would say, a prime factor, no question about it. Most of the colleagues that I've gotten to know have been through that AHP relationship.
Jim Quinn, 2020 Si Seymour Award winner. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience with all of us. And thank you for what you've done for our profession. One thing that you've been a little humble about is you have had an impact in many, many people's lives, but in particular, there are a lot of professionals who are working today, fulfilling work, successful work, and thriving in their own personal lives because of the mentorship that you provided, and because you were brilliant in hiring them in some cases in the first place. So thank you for today. We really appreciate it. For all who are watching, let's just take this time to celebrate Jim Quinn for this incredible career and this amazing award, the 2020 Si Seymour Award. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks so much, David. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very honored and humbled.
Thank you.